Hi, and welcome to the Fancy Comma YouTube. Today, I am joined by Anurag Srivastava, who we interviewed in a previous YouTube, and I'll link that in the description box. And I'm also joined by Vasu and Ella, and we're here to talk about our toxic experiences in toxic science culture. As I shared in my interview chat with Anurag, I left my PhD program after about 6 years because my project failed, and that was actually, and then I did another project, and that my it didn't end well, and so I became a freelance writer. So Vasu and Ella, what are your experiences with this science culture?
Hi, thank you, Shiva, for giving me this opportunity to speak about it. So my experiences basically it traces back to like 3 4 years back when I was wanting to get into an Indian university for my PhD program, and then I was promised a PhD, and I was striving hard to get it. But like when the applications and everything was done, there was this like the prospective supervisor, he said that he's about to change the university, and I wouldn't be able to like put in an application and apply for that PhD. And later I got to know that the person did not move anywhere, and it was like it took a lot of time for me to like work on that application, and I was not able to make that application as well. So it was very toxic for me at that time because I had like put in all my hard work into it. But I decided to work on it more and then find a place somewhere else. Although now I am having a secured PhD position at Hong Kong Polytechnic University, but the time it was like really very difficult for me.
Maybe we can ask Ella what their experiences were. Tell us about your experience, Ella.
Hello, everyone. So my experience was also with PhD. I did this PhD abroad, and everything was going kind of fine. I also discussed the thesis and everything. Then, once I was ready to come back home, the only thing that I was left to do was to submit the written thesis, and there were an agreement with my supervisor that this was okay, that I could do it at home. But then once I arrived at home, actually he changed the things, and he asked me to redo many analyses. Then he went through many different ideas comparing to what we were in agreement, also because I discussed the thesis, and I got a good mark also. So I was quite frustrated about that, and I tried to complete this long thing with him. But then at a certain point, he told me, "Well, you cannot anymore register to at the university, so basically your PhD is done." And it was really a drama for me. And I try many ways to how to say, to save what I did for 3 years and a half, and then after another years trying to do it in a different way, also in a legal way, using the law of the country and so on, and it was not possible. Also because it's quite expensive to pay a lawyer, and so at the end I decided to say, okay, well, I gonna move on, and now I move on. That's it.
So, did you get your PhD?
No.
So, did you get any degrees?
Well, of course, I have my master degree, but not my PhD.
Okay. What about you, Vasu? Did you move on? Did you get a degree? Did you get the degree, or did you just get left kicked out of your program?
No, no, actually, for me, it was like I was preparing beforehand for my application, and it was like it took me around 1.5 year to prepare for that application. So I was not enrolled. That was again the pre-application process, but the amount of time and the amount of effort it took, and then it resulted to nothing, kind of like wasted a lot of my time. It was the pre-application stage. Fortunately, I was not enrolled in any degree at that time. After that, I applied. So this experience that I'm sharing is prior to my abroad applications. Here, it's like I'm lucky to be very peaceful over here.
How long did you spend in the toxic lab environment before that?
It was like around 3.5 years, with 1.5 years of pre-application stage, and before that, I was a research assistant in the same lab. So yeah,
So you basically 4 years of your life was
three
wasted?
and a half, yeah. 3.5, yeah.
That's a lot. And then Ella, you said that that was your PhD. Your advisor just basically fired you. So how many years of that of your life was wasted there in the PhD pursuit of a PhD?
Yes, 3 years enough also from my side.
That's a lot. We haven't even talked to Anurag, but Anurag already told us his story on the other YouTube. But I don't know if Anurag wants to chime in and say anything at this point.
One thing which I will say, yeah, yeah, I can just chime in and say something. So what Vasundhara went through, I think a lot of a student goes through this. There are many PIs who promise students that you join our lab as a research fellow and we will convert that as a PhD. And then they they take the advantage of that student and they don't put that effort, and that is something which is really bad. This is another thing, like you promised me something, like what happened with Vasu is not correct, and what happened with Ella is like completely wrong. Once you have agreed for thesis and everything, you should let it finish, at least get it done. Someone has put their time, money and sweat on that research project. They deserve that degree. That is not something they are not, like, she did all the work, like that person did all the work, so it's very difficult. So that is what I would say.
In my case, I was a PhD candidate, and then my thesis committee, um, due to a chain of events that started from someone in the program saying I wasn't qualified, I basically my thesis committee resigned from my they just had I don't think they had any interest in being on my thesis committee. So even though I was a PhD candidate, and when you're a PhD candidate, actually all you have to do left is write your thesis. So, and I had started writing my thesis because I love writing. I had just started a thesis writing boot camp, and then on my transcript it literally says PhD candidacy revoked. So they took that away from me. I can't imagine what it feels like to on a large scale to have this happen because like you're just two people. Anurag said people contact him all the time talking about this. It happens a lot. How do you cope with this? Because life is full of failures and setbacks, and what matters the most is how you respond to those failures. So, what did you do? How are you feeling? What did you do to overcome that and to get to where you are now? Are you in a better place now? Maybe we can start with Vasu. How did you get through the difficult time? And do you think that what helped you cope?
There are a lot of things that actually helped me a lot. The first one being the article in the Nature magazine that if life gives you lemons, make it a lemonade. It's by Anurag. It is so viral now. And then the second thing was my support system in terms of like my fiance and my parents, my friends. They told me that if not this place, then you better apply for other applications and that would be successful. The lab leader at that time, to whom I was about to apply for my PhD, that person also told me that if you're going to apply somewhere else, you cannot take any of the ideas which is like quite normal. There's this intellectual property that you cannot take out of the lab. But the thing was that most of the projects that we were doing, most of the experiments that we were doing were my ideas. Like initially they were my ideas, and then they were developed with like group discussion. So I was not allowed to use any of those things that I did during these 3.5 years of experiments and research. I was not allowed to use that. So I came up with something new, which is like not very diverted from that field, which is quite connected. And then I developed again a new research proposal to apply to other universities. But then yeah, even though I had a lot of experience from that time, but there you still need, you have everything with you, but the most important thing is that you need some inspiration, you need motivation, and you need support system, a good support system. Unfortunately at that time it was COVID, so there was lockdown. What helped me again was that I was away from that toxic environment, because it was COVID lockdown and no one was allowed to stay in universities, or and everyone was back at their home. So environment wise, like physically I was not there in that kind of environment. That was also a very good reason for me to like keep aside all those things and focus on what I have on my plate at that time.
So, Ella, what about you? How did you cope with the cards the lemons life had given you, or the cards life had dealt you?
I can say that was very hard at the beginning. For the, I would say 2 years, maybe 3 years after, it was very hard. And I've been to really a deep, deep depression, especially because the main feeling was to feel a failure. And so this one was my life motif, you know. But then I've been, let's say, helped by a consultor, and I start to see what happened, and I also start to see without my feelings, because when you are in that particular moment and situation, you cannot anymore. I mean, this is my experience. You cannot anymore distinguish what is reality and what is your feeling, because with your feeling, you are, of course, seeing things differently, and everything is a pain, and you cannot actually be objective with what happened. And so, yes, after long 3 years, I was able to realize what happened, and of course, it was objective the not good behavior from the university and from the supervisor, but also I also understood a few things, that even if you have that passion, even if you want to do it since you are a child, you want to become, I don't know, a professor at the university, you want to do research and so on. Maybe also without maybe, the life is telling you something, and now is like that. I switch. Something in my mind click, thanks also to this help, and I don't think anymore that I'm a failure. I don't think anymore that some dogma that I have before were untouchable. And so I started to understand a little bit more how also the academia works. Even if I was inside, you know, when you are inside something, you don't have the right point of view to see. And when you are out and you have anger with you, you cannot also see the right point of view. Now I think I'm in the middle, and in the middle I can see the good things and the bad things for everything in general. And this was a big step for my life, and to move on, and also to recognize that I have a lot of skills that I also learned during my PhD, and I'm using it every day in my life. So now I can say, okay, this happened to me. I didn't get this piece of paper, because at the end it's a piece of paper. But actually, I can use those skills in other jobs in my life, and I can see sometimes also the difference between a person that actually has a basic study or a person that didn't study at all, So you have that plus that can that actually help you to find solution, to be a smart person in something that happened to you. So what happened to me was really to see that, okay, what I can do with this situation. I can cry for the rest of my life, or can I move on? And I decided to move on. It was difficult. I passed through many things, and but now I can say that that probably it was the episode, the scenario per se, what a way for me to, let's say, kind of wake up from, everyone has a dream and is there in the dream, but the dream sometimes need to be, a little bit uh, re readjust, and that doesn't mean that you need to leave your dream forever. You can keep to stay in the academia, as for example Anurag did, or Sovasu did, but also you can decide to say, okay, my skills can be, adapted in a similar environment, maybe no academia environment, maybe a similar field of your study, but maybe more, let's say, mm, I don't know, less research and more uh, work, I would say. Even if research is a work also, I know very well. So yes, was my my switch.
I'm sorry that both of you, all of us, I'm sorry all of us had to go through this, but um, this happens a lot in the journalism world, and I think it's a lot different in journalism, honestly, because, and maybe that's bad, that journalism, you can write a story, all you need is like a paper, pencil, people to interview, but for science, you need like a lab. But journalists get laid off all the time. Like, I think there's a number of publications that have just shut down. So then those people, they take, and journalists, just like scientists, take a lot of pride in having that job because it has a certain prestige, it has a certain access. It does have like a different, it kind of has like a different social status when you say, like, I'm a scientist. Like, you kind of, when I used to tell people I was a scientist, I would kind of feel a little bit like elite. But as a writer, I mean, as a journalist, I also feel that when you lose that I think that part is really hard. And when I watched this webinar about journalism, when you get laid off, one thing you're supposed to do is find awe in the everyday. So I never did that when I left graduate school. I just kept trying to recreate that same science culture of like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm doing all this important stuff. And it wasn't until I realized that probably just a couple of months ago that I actually stopped trying to create a hustle culture for myself, because that's not really healthy anyway in science. And I personally feel that, and I think this belief is a justified one, especially here in the US, where the federal government funds all of the trainees. Whenever you kick someone out of graduate school, you basically are wasting the government's money, and you're also wasting the person's time. And so it's like, if you really want to admit someone into a graduate program, then you have to, the graduate programs, it should be on them to do everything they can to train that student so that they can actually be successful, because their job is to train people. So if they don't do that, they're pretty much not doing their job. Now for me, I was in an interdisciplinary program in neuroscience, and the work I'm doing is really interdisciplinary. So in some ways, I am using my degree, but I entered that program to become a PhD, and I left as a master's. So I find that to be a huge problem, because if anyone can get kicked out of programs, anyone will get kicked out of programs, and it won't be like the people. It will be people like us, um, like me and Vasu are females. I'm not going to disclose Ella's gender, but Anurag's a guy. What are your thoughts on this? Like, in your countries, to the extent that you want to talk about this, like in India, how does the training process work for graduate students? Is it also federally funded, or do you pay yourself, or is there what is the what's the support system like for graduate students?
I worked in multiple countries. I have worked in India, also Israel, Italy, Netherlands, Germany. Most of the places, the thing is, it is the government money which is given on a grant. So in India, if you have to join a PhD program, you must clear some national level examination, and then just like US style, they have the proper interview and all these things, and the professors are supposed to train you. Um but as you know, most of them, like, one thing which I strongly feel is, we all over the world in academia, we have great scientists, but unfortunately we don't have great managers. So you have to manage the PhD students. You cannot do the teaching to them. That is the very fine line of distinction which most of the professors sometimes forget about, and that is where I feel most people lack, and that is why uh, people. There are many professors who are, even at their late age, also they are not ready to adapt to this situation. They're like, we were not trained in that way. We are not given these things, so it's not. It is just like, as we say, for childhood trauma and all these parenting issues and everything. I feel like a PhD student joining a research institute should be supported, well supported. Unfortunately, the power is so much, the power dynamics is so much in the favor of professor that the student doesn't know where to go, what to speak, whom to speak to. Now there are many universities which are coming up with proper guideline that if something happens with you, we are there to guard you. But it is it is in a very limited places. Right now, it is not implemented all across the world, but there should be a proper redressal mechanism where a student can go. And again, I am saying that any event which happens, it has two sides of stories. So there should be like proper independent committees that can analyze both the party, and firing should be the last option. There should be other redressal mechanism that, okay, if this is the case, how we can help the student. The university should take more responsibility. Unfortunately, I feel universities kind of run away from taking the responsibilities. They just want the students to join a research group, and then it is their headache. The university and other department, the other admin people, they need to come in and make a inclusive environment. That is my approach, but that is my understanding, not my approach, but that is my understanding. Because when it happened to me, I went to the dean, and he was like, "Sorry, we cannot do anything. He's your boss." I'm like, then why there is a so-called system is there? You should not have any system. So that's the one thing which I feel should be included more comprehensively. And yeah, the as you said, you are not only wasting the government money, you are also wasting the student time. And I feel especially bad for Shiva, Vashu, and Ella, because you guys had to spend almost 3 to 6 years of your life, and you were promised something, at the end you didn't get it. Fortunately, in my case, it happened within a year. Okay, there was like, I could have thought of a lot of things, but it just happened within a year. So I'm like, okay, fine, I can think about moving on. And as you said, here also the other thing which we should also consider is the gender part. The societal pressure on women is enormous. And if someone loses 3 year, 4 year, especially in Asian countries, and some other part of the world also. The pressure is enormous. Imagine that girl, like already a girl child, studying of is already at a very low level. I would not say at a very high level. It is a very low level in India itself. And then that person is trying to go for not only bachelor's but masters and then going for PhD. Someone trying to do that, and then you are literally destroying that part. Imagine the trauma that girl will go through, and the family. Like if that girl has a supportive family, then it's a different matter altogether. But most families are not supportive of these things. They're already against. If you study this much, how you will find the groom? Like all these societal pressure comes into this picture, the marriage, the children. There's so much in this whole scenario, which unfortunately no one even think about. And that is where I say that university have to take more responsibilities for the research, because any university is going to be known by the quality of research they produce, and the quality of research is driven by the PhD students and the postdocs. And if they are not kept safe, if they are not protected, then the research environment will collapse.
I wonder if Ella has any comments here.
In my case, what I saw was being a female was not a problem, but I saw basically that in a kind of discrimination at certain point. So I would say yes, even if there are such a awareness about to be women in science and so on. Nice words, but the reality is another one.
Everyone's always talking about, oh, women in science. But then there's no real support for women in science, because whenever, like, for example, and we blogged about this before, in science culture, like your advisor may want to go get drinks. And it's like, well, I'm
Esatto,
female and I
bravo.
also don't drink. So, like the guys can do that, or like maybe they throw a party or something. It's like, I don't, that doesn't, and then it's like getting asked to do menial activities. Like, can you, when I was in graduate school, one of my responsibilities was to take over the role of the research assistant. And like, I was a PhD candidate at that time, and I had already been a research assistant, like scheduling stuff, because I work with people. So, scheduling human subjects, kind of doing the behind the scenes work that fresh undergrad, fresh out of college would be doing. But I had been in graduate school for like 4 years, so I was obviously like, no, I don't have time. There's a double standard for women in science, and a lot of times people don't like to hear that there is a double standard, because in their mind, science is just inherently a good activity, and the people that do science are just inherently good. But and we talked about this a lot on the Fancy Comma blog also, that scientists are a product of society. Scientists can't be better than the society they're in, because they're just literally a product of it. As much as they want to, as much as they sometimes think they are, and I think they're not. And I think they're starting to get called out on it. If people are being rude, if they're being hateful, if they're being mean. Like, I've seen people just be overtly just mean to each other at lab meeting. Like, not even in my lab. I mean, it happens everywhere. Like, so many horror stories. Or like someone would like disappear and like, what happened to that person? Like, we don't know. Like, they just left the program or something. We shouldn't waste scientists' time, because like we're still scientists. We were in scientific training. Like, we don't, even if we don't have the fancy degree behind our name, like in my case, I still have like 6 years of scientific training. And this question really becomes like a question of structural inequality. Like, if some people aren't finishing their PhD but others are, what's the deciding factor between the people that are finishing their PhD and the people that aren't? And it doesn't usually, it's something like, I've talked to so many women that have had this problem, people that didn't even get into graduate school in the first place, people that left graduate school because their advisor, and I interviewed some people on writers that mastered out, and one of their advisors just undermined their career goals. What have you done with your mental health to be able to cope with this? do you want to talk about the mental health piece? I know for me, I was really devastated when I left graduate school because I had just graduated from MIT not too long before that. And it's very, when you go to MIT, everyone tells you that you'll be successful, you'll conquer the world. And then I wasn't successful in my PhD program. And I, I mean, my definition of success has changed a lot as well. So, but the mental health component was like really critical because it's easy to just like be really depressed and sad and be like, I'm a failure. But, and we talked about this on the other YouTube with Anurag too. But so, what have you all done with your mental health? What has worked for you? How have you been able to change your mindset to grow from this experience? Because that's really important in traumatic experiences is moving forward.
So for me, it was like at one point it was so bad. Like I'm sharing it with you all now, but it's like it was like I went and I like just chopped off my hair to like get out of that feeling that I am a failure, because I had a very very bad meeting with my prospective supervisor, and after that I was like, and there were some bad things also, some bad verbal exchanges from the other person. So I was so devastated. I felt so devastated that I had to go and chop off my hair. And after that, I don't know what happened. I felt like tons lighter. I am not recommending to do this, but then I don't know, like it was like okay. And at that point of time, after that meeting, after that moment, there was one realization, which is the sad reality, that I realized that you cannot turn the tables. No matter how much the other person or supervisors or PhD guides say that they are with you, ultimately, when it is the question of yes or no, they all are at one side and you will be there standing at the opposite side of the table. So I kept myself reminding this, that you don't have to be a rebel here. You just have to get out of this place and work on yourself and get a better place. So as I said, that COVID was one uh, opportunity for me to get out of that place physically. I'm not sure whether it is possible for like whether so in my condition it was favorable for me in a way that I was out of that physical environment, and then I took up to painting. So I learned painting that time because I was like painting, and that too there's an Indian form of painting that is called as uh, it's called Madhubani painting, which has like a lot of patterns, and you have to keep yourself concentrated to draw those patterns. Otherwise, if you miss one, your entire painting would go wrong. So that was a kind of meditation for me, where I kept myself more focused during my free time, and then I rest of the time I focused on my research work. So yeah, I basically, the reason was that I was at peace, thinking that first I had my plans that I'm going to apply somewhere else. I did not tell this to anyone in the at my workplace that I'm still applying. I'm applying for abroad PhD applications. So this was one thing, that I isolated myself from that environment, and then I kept meditating, and then focused on my work and just focused on my abroad applications. It's not easy. It's not easy. It took me 1 year again to apply for an abroad PhD program, and I have had like multiple rejections, around 18. So it's not easy, but you have to be there. You just have to stick on there and work for each and everything that's there in your list. I'm not saying that just for your application or something. Just make a list, make a to-do list, that where do you see yourself after this, and then yeah, that's how I kept myself more focused.
What about you, Ella?
So from my side, I want to go back a little bit what you say regarding the toxic environment. Just to say that, as you said, if science or scientists, they should be like the mirror of the society. Well, we are in a big issue, because if the scientific environment is a toxic, so means that all the society is toxic. So this is a big realization. What do you think?
It is a big realization, and it's for us, it's only happened because Kelly, who's in Fancy Comma, is a sociologist. You expect scientists to be better than the rest of the world. And the problem goes beyond that to me because it's like a pragmatic problem of we have these people, they already have been accepted to our PhD program, and then they like dropped out or they like failed. But they're the trainers. They're supposed to train you regardless of where you're at. It just doesn't make sense to me. I feel like it's on the programs to actually have supports. In other places, in other spheres, often you get a lot of feedback. Like I'm a tutor right now, and every few months I get like a feedback report. Like, don't do this a little bit differently. Or like it's just like this the scientific training process is so unstructured, at least here in the US, and it sounds like in other places around the world, that the system is built for people's failures, and it's not everyone's failures. It's like people that are already sort of marginalized, like women in science. Are we really being too hard on scientists because they're just part of society? And I think that honestly the onus is on them to train scientists regardless of what their gender is, regardless of their race, regardless of any barriers that they have, because the training program should account for those barriers, and it should support all people in science so that they first of all feel like they fit in, and then also actually succeed. And like I don't think that's hard. And I wonder what's preventing programs from doing that. And I wonder if what your views are on this. What do you think your program could have done better to support you so that you wouldn't have been met with such a fate?
Well, from my side, I think first that every supervisor need to have a mental health and also a good way to relate with the students, because in my experience was that my supervisor were not able to communicate, were not able to to involve students in a proper way, and they were just assume that you need to know everything before he does or whatever. So, and also really people that have people supervisor that have problem with alcohol, all these things that you understand, okay, this is professor, but actually behind there is a big issue, and all his frustration is actually given to the students. So that's why we have this problem, because I mean, what I saw from my point of view, from my experience, that was the reason. Beside that, I don't want to focus on the negative things. I want to just say that from the student point of view, of course, we are in the position, as also Vasu was saying, that we are in the position where we always wait for to be approved by a supervisor or professor or whatever. And what I can say also, that this is the wrong point. I mean, we should not always ask for to be approved, because when you become a PhD, when you become a researcher, you know what you do. And the supervisor can always give you an advice, but not say, no, this is not correct, it's not the way, it's wrong. Come on. We are not anymore like babies, we have, as you say, a lot of years of experience and so on. So for sure he can advise, but he cannot pretend that you write something even if it's not correct, or you should change everything because in his mind is completely another way. So also this one is something that you need to consider. Okay, I'm doing my research, I'm following this kind of field and papers and so on, but then it's my research. I am a researcher, I'm a PhD student, so this is what I'm gonna discuss or I'm gonna publish. And you, as a supervisor or who else, you need to, let's say, cope with me, not come against with me. And in case of, okay, someone can also take something wrong, and of course you need to arrange again and correct. But It's not like you always being in the position to be approved, because that one is the wrong part, in my opinion. Then, just to conclude my point here is, for me, in order to the first years after that bad experience was to focus on what really I like in my life. So I was focusing also in something that was creativity, was, for example, also physical activity. So I was focused basically in all my physical needs that I was completely, when you are doing your PhD, you don't have time. I don't have time to go to the gym, to swim or whatever. So I spent so many years like really focusing on the research, and without even taking a lot of care of my body. And what I did was really focus on me, my soul, my body, me as a first point. Then from there, when you collect all your pieces, you collect all your pieces, you put together, you understand more or less if you're fine, if you're not fine. From there, you can really decide what you want to do. You want to again do on the same path, try in another university, or you want to change path and see what can be in your life. And for me, it was like that, to start from myself as taking care of my health, body, mind, soul, everything. This is why was my way forward.
That's a great way forward. I know when I left graduate school, the first thing I did was I fulfilled my dream of running a marathon. And I ran the Chicago Marathon in 2013. And then I tried to reapply to graduate school. And alongside that, I ran the Marine Corps Marathon in Washington, D.C. So, and then I ran the Philadelphia Marathon after that. That was a great way to, because, as academics, we're very competitive. We like being rewarded. And then when you get kicked out of something, that kind of breaks the reward aspect. And so I found running really rewarding. I started freelance writing, and then that's my job now. I think that's really important to focus on that when you experience basically it's the loss of. I've thought about this a lot. The loss of one's career, and I don't think this happens as often for men as it does for women, because now I, even with Fancy Comma, I'm like, what if this all crumbles and then I'll have to start over yet again? And it doesn't really work like that, because I'm the person in my business that does everything. But it's like there's always that fear of that anxiety of like, what if this just doesn't work again? And then it's like, why wouldn't it work? Like, I'm an MIT graduate. I am very smart. I can get stuff done. But I really do feel that getting let go of my PhD or like leaving my PhD program has affected me in I want to say, traumatizing way. And I think that I really don't wish this on anyone. I really do believe that it's mostly marginalized people already that kind of suffer this kind of consequence. And that's why I think it's really a failure of the graduate institutions. And they can do what they want to, get rid of the students that aren't performing. But at the end of the day, I really do believe that if they admitted that person, why are they suddenly failing? Because they were admitted based on the things that makes them a good person for the program. So, and I was admitted to like 6 graduate schools, and um, it's mind-boggling to me. And I just want everyone, if you're a person that has been affected by something like this, you're clearly not alone. Like, all 4 of us have been affected by this, and while it may seem hard, like, it truly gets easier. Obviously, like, for me, I will never be a research scientist, but like I never really wanted to live that life, just because it is so toxic. And like the women I saw doing that were so like, they gave up so much to be successful, like just too much. Like, I'm not willing to do that. I think that's a problem for science. What was your research topic, Ella? Or I don't know if you want to disclose that, but are you still working on that, or are you moved on? What do you do now?
Well, no, I completely change. I'm actually, yes, more in this thing. So more in, let's say, in health field, let's say. Also, I'm doing counseling and other things like not anymore related to common science, let's say. So yes, I completely changed my. I mean, I still love the previous field, but yes, I changed it and I focus on more on what I like, and it is um, also nice to help people. I'm able. I'm right now. I don't deal with the PhD students, but I deal with the common people that has a different issue in their life, and I'm always happy to help and see from uh, maybe the same problem from a different point of view and give uh, an option to solve it, like realizing that maybe the issue comes from, I don't know, a misunderstanding or something else. So yeah, so the sometimes the key is to put yourself in the other, how to say, in the other shoes, and for real, not just okay, not always blame the other part. So it's interesting also. So I moved basically to the psychology part. And yeah, not only psychology part but also like feelings part. Yeah, it's interesting now.
I will just add on all the points which you raised regarding mental health and the question which Ella raised, that if the scientific world is so toxic, is it representing the society? So, uh, just to give some more perspective to it, in the world there are only 1% of people who have a PhD degree. So we come as a cream of everything. So it does represent the society at a very top level. That is the number one point. The number two point is PhD is like, when I was saying that the university has to take more responsibility, it was not regarding that PhD student doesn't have the responsibility, because research is your domain. You chose to enter the research field because something was motivating you, something was pushing you. So it is your job to make sure that it is done. That is one part. The other part of this is, like, one aspect which I feel is, most of the time, even though we want to consider our supervisor as our colleague, it becomes very difficult for us to accept that way. We start somewhere seeing them as a higher up. If that part we should try to minimize, like, it is easier said than done, and it has to be done from the supervisor side, because a student is still a student. He will see you at a higher level. But if the supervisor is very, like, make that environment, like when I went and worked, at the last phase of my PhD, I went in Netherlands. There I didn't feel that supervisor was a supervisor. He was more like a very healthy colleague. He will come, share his personal life, sometimes personal life, but share more as an insight on how research should be done, and all these things should be supported. That is the other aspect. And coming to the third part of my point is regarding the mental health. You know, when we lose someone close to us, like, let's say there is a death of your grandparents or some relative or some friend, we take out time to mourn their death. But when we lose the dream, a dream that we have harnessed for more than a more than 5 years, 6 years, that has been the closest to us, Do we take that time to mold that dream? Unfortunately, not, because we're not trained. We are just asked move on. But how do you move on? Those broken dream comes and pinch you. Me seeing myself as a professor still come and haunts me sometimes. But that is a thing. Be easy on yourself. It is not your fault. As Shiva said, it is the graduate school that is failing us. Okay, we are also doing mistake, but we are there. A PhD student is supposed to do a lot of mistake so that they can become an independent researcher. Unfortunately, our mistakes are thrown at us in a very bad way by the supervisor because they are hungry for the publication. They just want, like, yeah, I know, when a life science graduate they join a PhD program, their goal is, yeah, we will publish a Nature or a Science. But that belief is reinstated by the PIs. You can do that. And when that doesn't happen in a year, the PI knows that it cannot happen in a year. But when they come and tell you that you if you are not publishing it, you are good for nothing, then your self confidence take a beating. I know a lot of stories after my this story got published. Like, they were promised everything, but in a year they were unable to publish, and the PI literally left them. They are like, "You are good. You're not good for me. Do whatever you want to do." And that person did. Somehow they finished their PhD, but it was without any supervision. When I went to Netherlands, they were shocked to know that I was not exploited well. I was not pushed to my limit to get the best out from me. I was not a bioinformatics scientist, but I learned and I did really good there with all the bioinformaticians, with statisticians. So it's not in you, like, that is where I realized how a healthy environment can get most out of you. When you are going for a graduate program, don't look for the name of the universities. Don't look for the name of the professor. Because many times what happens, a new student, just because there is a very famous professor, they join that professor, but that professor has around 15 PhD students, 40 postdoc or 20 postdoc. You are going to be in the last queue. You will never get that attention. And if you don't get that attention, how you are going to succeed? We all know that there are not many jobs in academia. So those who are doing their PhD, they are already thinking about what other things they can think of. But what if I was after this video was our interview was published, I got this comment from one of my friend, and he said that when he was doing his PhD, he got this comment from his not for him, but for the group of a PhD student, because they were at a conference, and the PI just go and say, if you don't succeed in PhD, you end up on the other side. The other side was the PhD people who are representing some companies, and that was a devastating thing. That because they looked down on them. Can you do a research without Thermo Fisher or Sigma being present in the world? They are the one who are providing all the chemicals and all these things. If they are not there, you cannot do the research. But we don't want our scientists to move into industry because in the society it is not considered elitist position. Can you do the communication without the science communicators? Otherwise, you will end up reading all these clickbaity news. The headline will always be a clickbaity. We have to, like, just to summarize my point, the message to the new graduate student: choose the lab where you will be the priority. You are not one in many. That is the one thing. The second thing, If something bad happens, like this unfortunate incident happened, give yourself time to mourn for your dream. You have lived that dream from childhood. Don't just ignore that loss, and take care of the mental health. You are not wrong. Like I have went through counseling. I have taken professional support. It was available at my university at Unito. I took that professional support, and these supports are like they are a very big thing. Like they help you detach yourself from that emotion which you have, because those emotions are always the negative emotion. You do a lot of self negative talk. Just look at the things from a pragmatic situation. There is no hesitation, there is no shame in taking a professional help. It's a great you have a support system, but unfortunately, those support system cannot help you in understanding these complex situations. For that, you need that professional support, and that is why I always advise now people that if something has happened, go to that thing. And I think Ella has evolved a lot and went into this thing because she has gone to this counseling and all these things. Somewhere I will say that this bad experience had a role to play, because once you go through something, when I wrote that story, it was more about me telling everyone else you are not alone. Me helping whenever someone reach out to me, whether it's Vasu or Ella or anyone, I speak to them because I know that how difficult it is to feel alone. Ella also mentioned about the discrimination against the nationality, and in US, most people who never finished or never get a chance to uh, go to a graduate school are from the African and Hispanic community. The one who are more underprivileged, they never get the chance. We
Yeah,
rarely,
it's
I don't,
we do have that
yeah,
problem, and that's a huge
yeah,
problem. And I think
yeah,
it's an extension of this problem is like there's bad science culture, only certain people make it through, some
exactly.
people don't even get in,
And
others get kicked out. That's not okay, right?
yeah, and also I forgot the name of this book. It's a very nice book. It's on the African. It's the black woman scientist who played a very important role in the growth of NASA and computers and other thing. I'm just not remembering the name. But unfortunately, we don't see the face of scientist as a black scientist, black woman scientist. That is a rarity. So
The
that's
problem
the whole
is
thing.
it's not, I don't think it exists as much as if it does. So when I was in graduate school, I honestly, there were very few people, not only people that, there were some people that looked like me. I mean, but there were very few black professors. You could say the same about Native American professors. The representation was kind of like more of privileged people in that I saw my professors as privileged. I don't know if they really were privileged because, they did work really hard, but it's like those were the people that made it to the top levels of academia. And like, I mean, academia is very diverse, it's international, but I, it's when I've talked to people that I've talked to, some people applied to graduate school, they didn't even get in. Like, and a lot of people apply to PhD programs and they don't even get in. And then like the people, and it's like, I wonder why. And now I've heard, I haven't been in graduate school for about 10 years, but I've heard that now the standards are higher for graduate school. Like you have to do like a bunch of research already before you go into graduate school. And you have to publish before you go into graduate school, which is like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I mean, does it make, I don't think it makes sense because then it's like only people that have had those opportunities can go to graduate school. Here in the US, this guy named Vannevar Bush, who is a professor at MIT, then he became our science advisor for the president during World War II. He had this idea that research would be funded by the government to help the people, but I just feel like people aren't being helped as much as they could be because given, like, for example, in the US, 95% of clinical trials are white and male as a default. So, and that's because scientists, they didn't think about until COVID happened. They're like, oh, we have to make a vaccine for everyone. And they finally started making clinical trials more diverse. I don't want to go through another pandemic where we have people, sort of like the scientific elite, talking to the general public and sort of just completely going in parallel directions. And like, scientists don't find general people relatable, relatable general people don't find scientists relatable. And that has a lot to do with the culture that in which science is steeped. And it honestly breaks my heart to think of like everyone's careers who have been ruined by trying to have a career in science. So what do you think is the way forward? We've talked about our experiences. I'm sure that our other video got so many views. I wonder how many people will take the time to watch this video and maybe share their thoughts in the comments. The mental health aspect I think is the hardest. Like going into something as a scientist, like people that go into science are already very smart, and just to see them fail is really, I think that's really hard for them, and I think it's unnecessary in some ways. So do you guys have any insight on things that you wish would have happened in your program or anything?
University has to take more responsibility to train the professors as a man manager. Number one. Number two, there should be some independent people who should be regularly observing and reviewing your work, who are not being influenced by your PI. So that is another thing that could help, and that could give you guidance. That is another thing which I strongly feel that can come into the picture. And the PI has to make sure that the environment is less toxic, and there should be a, a, counselor, so that a student, if they feel something is not good with them, it can be anything related with their work or personal or something that could impact their research. They should go and they can speak to this counselor, and the confidentiality is maintained. So all these things, if taken into consideration, things will improve, and I am hopeful it will improve. Like the funny part is, it happened with me, and I moved on to another PhD. I should be the most if you look from the outside perspective, I should be the one who should be speaking against the academia and research, but I am the one who always encourages people to go into the research, because I know how beautiful this experience is. So that is why I always encourage people that they should try this thing. There are many things and there should be like we can make a forum or something like that, where people from anywhere in the world can reach out to us and talk to us. They can get some inputs from us, something like that. A little bit of that can be created, a community, just like we had some community for people moving from academia to industry. There are many communities that came up, something like that, that can help the students who are going through some rough patches. That is what I would strongly suggest. Apart from that, the final word is, it's not your fault. You are not a failure. You might have done some mistake. That is the part of learning. But you are not a failure, because a PhD is not like this one experience is not going to define your life.
I also resonate with whatever Anurag said.
Ella, what about you?
Yes, I agree with the suggestion that Anurag said, and it's important that someone is there to objectively fall the situation from an external point of view, and see if the supervisor is well behaving, also the student is well behaving, and also if there is a good uh, relationship within them and not a toxic one, or all these things. So yeah, someone that is I don't know, checking the situation as for example, I remember, no, the pressure to give the report every 6 months. It's not just that. You should also have someone that not check your just your progress in your research, but also someone that check how is the the relationship within the parts.
Well, it's been really interesting chatting with you all, learning from your experiences. I wish I would have had this conversation earlier because for several years I felt like I was the only person this ever happened to. But maybe if I had found maybe this video that we recorded today and watched it, maybe that would have changed the course of my life and I wouldn't have been so affected by it. And I think knowing that you're not alone, that this kind of stuff happens to everyone. And it a lot of time, like even in the tech world, like many people are getting laid off right now, and in the economy and COVID, their life is full of challenges. But just because their life is full of challenges doesn't mean that we should make life harder for people. And I think in academia, and I could talk about this all day because I went to MIT, it's like, then I went to Georgetown, I worked in academic research. I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I wonder, and maybe someday I will chat with someone like, how realistic is it to you, try to fix these problems? But it's very subjective. The process is so subjective, and also there's just this idea that sometimes life happens, and like if you get kicked out of your PhD program, it's hard, but you can definitely. One good thing, and I learned this from working on editing a book about resilience, is when something bad happens to you, your immediate instinct is to just like ignore it and just like not think about it. But actually, what's better for you mentally, emotionally, just in general, is actually to reflect on it, think about how can I do better for next time, or like what do just like dig into the painful memory and like be like, oh, like for me, I left graduate school with my PhD program with a master's, and even though I didn't graduate with the PhD as I had initially set out to do, I gained a lot of experience. I met a lot of cool people, and I have all this life experience. And just because you leave a graduate program doesn't mean that the experience leaves your mind. Like you have all this knowledge, you're a scientist from much more than most people in the world are. Reflecting on that and like being able to move forward from that is something that's really valuable to be resilient. Just reflecting on it and getting really depressed is not productive. There's there's a grieving period, like you can sulk about it, feel bad, but at some point you have to take action to, move on. And that's like the really important part for resilience is that. And I think that's really hard because like we put our whole career on like I'm going to be a scientist, like that's all I'm doing. Like we don't go to different family events just to get this goal, and then when it doesn't happen, I think that can be very devastating. I think it's really great that we chose to reflect on this today, and I think this will help a lot of people that find this video and realize that they're not alone. Just because you get kicked out of a PhD program doesn't really mean that much about you. It just means, if that happens, you still have your knowledge, you still have your other degrees that you had, your research experience. And there's a lot of places, just because scientists don't talk about where their research fits into the real world as much as like I think about it, like doesn't mean that it doesn't fit into the real world. Like scientists have a place at every table. Scientists are important in society, and you don't have to have a fancy degree to use your science knowledge. I have learned because I use it a lot, and I'm still trying to do research outside of academia and advance knowledge. So I really thank you guys for your insights today because I think this was a really great discussion, a bit difficult, but a good discussion. And I really look forward to sharing this with Fancy Comma viewers and seeing what they have to say, if anything, and at least bringing awareness to this fact. That's the other thing I want to conclude with is I saw online someone wrote, I don't really think a lot of people get kicked out of their programs. Like, I think most people graduate, but I think it's because no one talks about their experiences because maybe they're ashamed of their experience. But, like, now that we're talking about it, people will know about it, and then they will know, like, oh, yeah, this is actually a real problem. And I'm glad we brought awareness to that today from this discussion because it's really a lot of people's mental health, careers, whole lives are kind of being destroyed in this process of training people to advance science. And I don't think it's really necessary for those things to all be happening. Just because you don't hear about something doesn't mean it's not happening. And we by sharing our experiences, I think we're kind of changing the perspective. Is like, oh, like that person got kicked out. Like actually, a lot of people get kicked out of the PhD programs. So I'm really grateful for this discussion and for your time today. So thank you all.